And we back, and we back. Yeah. Hey, this ain't no intro.
This is the intro.
Yeah, this is the intro.
This is the intro.
It's the entree. Hit that intro with Kanye. I sound like Andre. Tryna turn my baby mama to my fiance. She like music, she from Houston, like Auntie Beyonce. Man, my daughter couldn't have a better mother if she ever...
What's going on? What's going on, everybody?
Welcome back to another episode. Listen, he just cut out the part where he just...
Go ahead, do it. Show them what I did.
No, you show them what you just did.
Anyway, welcome back, everybody. I'm glad to have you here. We're loving all of the responses, all the interactions, the messages that you guys send us about the episode.
Last episode we did, yeah.
Just in general, we're happy to know that you guys are still enjoying the experience, especially as
and the content.
We continue to work on the cast. We have put together and are putting together a social media team, so there's going to be a lot more content coming out from us soon, like we promised, that we're really looking forward to. I feel like there's no need to say this is a big talk, because like we always have big talks.
Yeah.
But this is a very complicated one and a very deep one for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Us included. You know what I mean? I just feel personally, no matter who you are, if you are one, or what kind of experience you've had, parents are easily the most complex aspect of life for everyone.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
I do. But that's not entirely true for some people.
No, I think it's for everyone. Listen, just hear me out, right?
Yep.
Follow me, right? It doesn't matter if you had good parents, if you had bad parents, if your parents weren't there. Like, that experience affects your development and your interaction with other people. It affects your relationships.
Sure. Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter how it impacted you. Literally, everybody is impacted in a complicated way with their parents. I remember, so something that people say to me all the time is, you're such a good dad. You're such a good dad. And that's by their standards, and I appreciate that. And I'm like, I've got a lot of shit to work on. A lot of things I know I need to be better at. You know what I mean? And then, look, right? Here's another thing.
Yeah.
The relationship that women have with their mothers and sons have with their fathers is very different to the relationship that sons have with their mothers and that fathers have with their daughters.
So this is speaking from a very traditional family unit.
No. I'm talking
we
about...
have same-sex couples that have kids, you know what I mean?
Yes, but that's not excluding them.
Okay.
That's not excluding same-sex couples at all.
Okay.
Because listen, we can look at that conversation very much, and we'll touch on that too. Like, the way sons with two moms are, and daughters with two fathers are. You know what I mean? But the point that I'm making is, all of these things impact every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
Our relationships with our parents.
Or our lack of relationship.
Or lack of, exactly. That's
parents.
the point that I was making.
Yeah.
So you still think that's only for some people?
No, it's clearly for everyone.
Okay, no, because you were like, some people, but no. This is not me coming for her. Because you feel like I've been coming for you for the last 3 episodes.
last episode, woo!
But anyway, so now I think this is... It's funny that we haven't had this. But yeah, this is a big...
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we're going to cover this episode is...
Well, so we're talking about aging parents, right?
Yeah.
And because I think it's definitely a little bit more true for me than it is for you, just because of our age difference. But many of us are hitting that point where we're watching our parents get older. And that's very hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, but...
And
that's a privilege for a lot of people.
It is.
Like, my grandparents died very young.
Right, and so that's the other aspect of that.
I would have loved to have seen them grow old.
Because some of us have lost our parents already, or lost our parents at a young age. And so we're talking about all of the aspects of that. We're also going to cover the differences between our generation and their generation in terms of family dynamics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Things that we feel like we're doing, things that have done better, things that we praise them for. I think another thing that makes this conversation so complicated, is something I just highlighted. I can clearly tell you there are a lot of things that I want to and need to work on as a father. But so part of what makes this conversation real for me is we never knew each other during this phase of my life, but there were years and years and years of my life that I held bitterness and resentment for our generation. Just the weakness, the lack of consistency, the frailty. I had nothing but complaints. And it's because in my youth I hadn't suffered. I was too strong. And so I didn't have really empathy or sympathy for people that weren't, strong, I guess, for lack of a better choice of words. And I remember I got into a argument on Tumblr one time. I blasted somebody because I was voicing these grievances, and he said, yeah, all of that is true, but you have to understand our parents did this to us. Like, they gave us these issues and these weaknesses that you have so much of a problem with. And I completely disregarded it, and I was like, yeah, but it's a cop-out.
Yeah.
We have to take responsibility for ourselves. Yeah, this is what somebody did to you, but who are you choosing to be in spite of that? And I think it's pretty obvious that I've grown out of that view, and I've come to a place where, for better or worse, I hold and harbor a lot of resentment now, not towards us per se, but towards our parents' generation for a lot of the failures and situations that they've engineered and created. Before we jump into it anymore, like, what do you... I don't think that our parents' generation is very good at taking accountability. I think a lot of them, no matter the quality of the job they did, the conversation is always, well, I did my best, so you should be grateful for what I did.
Yeah.
And I get that, but there was this conversation happened years ago, I think maybe 2 years ago on Poly Twitter, where other people were making that you should be grateful to your parents because they fed you and they provided you and they did this for you. And honestly, like you say all the time, my combative wife, you don't applaud a fish for swimming.
That's your job.
Exactly. If you weren't willing to do those things, you shouldn't have had kids. And you shouldn't necessarily be applauded for doing the bare minimum, because there's a lot more that goes into being a parent than just...
I'm very here and there on that topic of our parents' generation, because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of your job. You can't be like, oh, I provided for you. Electricity was
try to use the things that you were supposed to do that you did and use them as currency now.
Yeah, it's like emotional currency to kind of keep you in a certain place. But that being said, I also empathize
and have appreciation for the struggle.
Like, especially my mom's generation, especially like Islanders. Because what would I be, a first generation immigrant here in New Zealand? Like, my mom and her siblings came from Samoa. They were the first. It wasn't the grandparents came and then had them here.
No, they came and fought to make moves and make a life of privilege.
So I can understand from their perspective, having lived in Samoa in a place, where you had to work
less and
till the land and kind of do a lot of other things, and then come here and we're kind of just, what are you doing with what you have here? Like, I can understand that perspective of, like, this is
but I also
the dreamland for them. This is the milk of land and honey, for like the land of milk and honey for them. This is like where you were supposed to make the most. Like, it wasn't, like, I can very much empathize with that kind of...
I think also a lot of them have issue with the reality of the dream, because that's the thing about a dream instead of a goal. What you envision in your head is always different than what you get. And there are a lot of parents who have disappointment in their children in our generation because we don't speak our language or we don't know the culture. But they are the ones who actively didn't teach us a lot of these things because they wanted us to assimilate. I have this argument with
my mother. Which isn't necessarily their fault.
Right. No, and I'm not blaming for that. I'm just saying. So I think even they are kind of living with the same duality as us of not, like having to live with the reality of what your dreams turned into.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people from our generation who are first generation here, were born here, and growing up in whiteness, the shame and the distance that they try and put from themselves because they don't want to be what they are. Because they've adopted the white view of our people, of how we're less than. So they don't want to be seen as islanders, or they don't want to be seen as ethnic people. They just want to be like their friends, and they want to live the New Zealand dream or the American dream. And that too, I think, is painful for our parents to see.
That's why, I try to put on so much for our people, and with a lot of, because it just hurts to see parents who've come, my parents' generation, who've come, they've literally moved from the islands. So they've moved from the struggle to come here and struggle. Well,
But the struggle has layers, and there's different
levels.
That
is true.
You know what I mean? Because in Mexico, people work the fields, and they get $10 a day, right?
Yeah.
But in America, they work in the factories, and they get $10 an hour.
That's still shit.
It is, but which situation? You know what I mean? Like, you can have nothing and then have nothing. So I get that too. But in terms of the aging conversation, is so wild, right? Because this conversation hits differently depending on the relationship that you have with your parents.
Facts.
Because if you have a horrible relationship with your parents, right? I have 3 mothers, which is something we've talked about, but to jump into that a little bit, that's very interesting, right? Because for me and my biological mother, she's a different person now in her increasing age than she was in her younger years. And so and I've had this conversation before with a lot of people, when I was younger, a lot of her time, energy, and effort had to go to my older biological brother because he was a problem child and he needed love and attention. And so she was in and out of court and things like that. And so we didn't have a ton of time there, right?
Which is rough as a mother to kind of...
Yeah, and then also, that was post-divorce.
Yeah.
And also, she comes from a very hard place. And she grew up in a very hard way. And she had to be a very hard person. So emotions and things that we consider motherly weren't really high on her list of priorities because she wasn't that type of person and didn't know how to be that. So she didn't know how to raise a kid that way. My mother wasn't hugs and kisses and shit like that. That's just not who she was.
Which I feel is very ethnic, on par with brown mothers of her generation.
Right. It was, survival, making sure you stay alive, things like that. And so there's a comment that I shared with Huva recently, right? Or Huva, I always say it wrong. But anyway, in the movie Kill Bill, right? And this is still on topic. In the movie Kill Bill, when the lady's hunting him, she goes to visit a man who was like the father to Bill. And the comment that she makes, it opened up a door for me. And it really made me understand parts of me and about my life. And Huva agreed. She says, like most men who didn't grow up without a father, Bill collected father figures. And so she goes to see one of his father figures. Now, that's not true for me with fathers, but it's definitely true with mothers. Yeah. I collect mothers, which is why I have 3 mothers, But now that she's older, and this happens with a lot of our parents, even though they won't admit or can't say or can't identify with things that they regret, they view their past differently. They don't want to look at, well, I did this to my kids, or I didn't do this for my kids. And I feel like that creates a barrier to conversation too.
No, I do. I know. I feel like in their older age, they start to get contemplative.
And
but not necessarily... Like, they themselves kind of admit to themselves certain things, but they
don't
can't
share.
Yeah. But I just feel like
But
they can't share. Not that they can't, but they didn't grow up in a way that they had the capacity to share willingly.
So something, and just to contribute to that, right? Here are my feelings on this situation. I find something happened to me recently, and it made me understand words that I've hated all my life. And the words that I hated that I always used to hear were, I understand, but I don't agree. Or I understand, but I'm not okay with. And it used to make me so angry, because I'd be like, if you understand, what's there not to, you know? But now that this experience is happening to me more often, I guess as I'm getting older, that's one conversation where I can say, I understand where they're coming from. I empathize, but I don't agree, and I'm not okay with. You know what I mean? And so just the way this affects my biological mother and I, she's at a point where now she wants that motherly bond and connection with me. And sometimes it feels a little sad and hurtful to her that we don't have that dynamic. I'm her son, you know what I mean? She loves me and I love her, but we grew up more with a friendship. And so I have more of a friend-aunt relationship with her, and that's something that is sad for her, and I get that.
Yeah.
But I can't force something now that we didn't have.
Yeah.
Especially since I have mothers that provide that to me. Yeah. And I know that that's been hard for her as well, because I remember something you had said to me earlier in our relationship. I think it was like our first year of marriage. And, you know, we just agreed we're lifers, but you were like, don't ever let my children call another woman mother.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think you can definitely identify where what she's coming from, where it's hard for her to know that, you know, even though she's my mom, there are other women that I view as my mother.
Listen, for me, it's very, it will hurt, it would hurt, but it wouldn't be like, if my kids called other people mother, it just meant that there was something that I didn't do right. But and that's something that
very few people have that kind of self-honesty, and I salute you for that. I think that's beautiful, because not a lot of people can say that. Like I said, that's really one of my number one bones with our parents' generation. They don't believe, or at the very least, they won't acknowledge that there's any wrong that they have ever done.
One thing I do want to touch on is because I see it quite a lot in my line of work, and as people get older, there's like that kind of, should you forgive them for a lot of the stuff that has happened because they're getting older and because they're reaching their end?
Go ahead.
I don't know the answer to that. I know my mom's getting older, but I never grew up with, like, she's still pretty young to me.
Yeah, your mom's young enough to be my older sister, so that's why I said this conversation is, like,
she's still young to me, so I don't have that kind of relationship with any older person who's, oh yeah, I guess, yeah. So what's your view on it?
So this has different levels for me, right? Because I think the first and biggest part of it is, do they have remorse, right? I think accountability is a major factor. Do they have remorse? Have they accepted and acknowledged the wrongs or hurts? Has there been conversation about it? Because I'm not just forgiving somebody for something that they haven't acknowledged. Especially if you've hurt me, and this is a way that has shaped my life, and you take no accountability for what this has done to me. So just getting older or losing your faculty doesn't automatically entitle people to forgiveness. That's one. Is there accountability? Is there remorse? Have we cleared the air? Two, it depends on the severity of the situation. Did you directly do something to me? Did you allow someone else to do something to me? Which is almost as good as the same thing, depending on the situation. You know what I mean? So that comes into it too. Did you just have a second family? Or did you beat the shit out of me? Did you molest me? There's layers to this. But and then also we have to say, forgiving is not the same as saying, okay, well, you can come back into my life.
Yeah.
Or we're good now.
That is true.
I forgive that maybe this situation was outside of your control. But if you were a parent that didn't give a fuck about me, and then you worried about going to hell and you just want to be cool on your deathbed, fuck you. You know? And even kids doesn't change that for me. Because if you were a shitty parent your entire life, and we have no connection, but now I have kids, and you older and you want to know your grandkids, you've done nothing in your life to prove to me that you can sufficiently and should be allowed to interact with children, especially my children. So just because you're feeling nostalgic doesn't mean that I've forgotten any of the things that you've chosen to be, that I have no knowledge of you not choosing to be those things anymore.
Yeah.
And I think a prime example of this was, we were talking about mixed race kids, because we were saying how, or they were saying, people were saying how children can heal prejudice and hate and things like that.
Oh, no.
And this girl was saying that's false, because I'm half black and half white, and my grandfather was racist his entire life, and all it taught me to do was hate myself for all the parts of me that weren't white.
Yeah.
So just because he got older and he loved his grandbaby, it didn't change any of the things about him that made him him. Yeah. And it definitely had an impact on all of the things that made her her, which was someone who hated herself for the vast majority of life, because Grandpa loved me. And if Grandpa, and I love Grandpa, and he can't be wrong, so I must be wrong.
Yeah, it's tough.
So I'm forgiveness, James, is not really my. It has to have merit. Like I said, and forgiveness is not you are entitled or allowed to take up space now in this place that you haven't earned in my life.
I feel like for some people, they're like, when they have not so great experiences with their parents or with figures in their life that matter to them, that was, there's a lot of anger when they get older.
Definitely.
And a lot of
there's resentment there for unchecked and unaddressed issues. Yeah. There was just this video on the TL, right? And it was this woman who's an adult, and her son posted the video because she is the caretaker of her mother, who's 90 years old. And I just want to say first, I'm not agreeing, condoning, or saying the behavior I saw in the video is okay, but I understood everything that it came from. Because like I said, her mother's 90, and she's now her mother's caretaker. And the way she takes care of her mother, I can completely tell the type of childhood she had and relationship she had with her mother. Her mother was in the bathroom and had pissed on herself because she's not capable to hold her bladder. And this woman was in the bathroom viciously beating her mother with a belt, calling her an animal and for not being able to hold her bladder. And people got angry at the son and were saying, why were you just recording? Why weren't you helping your grandmother and all the things I would have done in this to protect her? But apparently this woman had friends in the legal system, and every time she did get locked up or for anything, she was out the next day. And no matter how much elderly care people had been notified to step in, no one had done anything.
Yeah, that's what
So
elderly abuse is quite a common thing.
It is. And this is a part of that conversation, because there are people like my father died at 56, which is a very young age to pass away. And our family is still affected by that to this day, especially my sisters. It hits all of us because I'm the only one with children, and my father never got to meet his grandchildren, and that hurts me. That's very hard for me. But I think the relationship you have with your children can definitely come back to hurt you or help you once you age, depending on it. Because there are people who weren't there, and then they're in a home and they're like, why would you do this to me?
Yeah. I think one thing that maybe a lot of Pacific Islanders, and kind of staying on topic, Pacific Islanders don't, and I hope they do have in the future, is kind of like life plans. In terms of life plans, I mean like life insurance. Yeah. What happens to
after this point, so that your family's, you've provided enough that your family's not burdened by taking care of you.
And because I hear so many stories of like when their parents die, there's nothing that they've left them but debt kind of thing.
Right. We've definitely had that conversation. You and I have had that conversation on a personal level, because we've talked about the differences between families. And well, there's something that happens in Tonga, right? So depending on the kind of man you were if you were a decent father and you have a good relationship with your family, then your family takes care of you. But we have a lot of older men that once they reach a certain age and their families don't want them and there's nobody to take care of them and they're lonely,
they willingly go live.
What they do is they commit minor crimes or petty crimes and they go to jail and they go live at the men's prison so that they have a community of men to be with.
Yeah.
And they have a little farm there and they sell vegetables to provide for their needs, and it's how they end their lives. And for a lot of people, it's sad, and for them, it's accepted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this way they don't lose. They haven't done anything to earn their family's love, but they still get to have friends. It's like, it's shitty, but it's like retirement for older men in Tonga. You just, you don't go to jail. Live it up with my buddies, you know? Like, oh, hey, anyway, but the same thing is happening in Japan. Because the cultural dynamic has changed, and a lot of these husbands are marrying into families, and your mother can't come live with us.
Yeah.
And so these older women don't have anyone to take care of them, and their government benefit is running out. And so it wasn't even intentional at first. They were getting caught stealing, and they were going to jail, and now there's like a community of older women that have a prison as like their retirement home.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sucks the taxpayers paying for you because you didn't have a retirement plan. But
and I think a lot of people will hear this and be like, "Oh, that's shitty. You should take care of your family. You should take care of your parents, no matter what relationship you have with them." But I think one, that's people that haven't necessarily had a horrible experience with their parents. And I think, two, that brings us back to the conversation of elderly abuse. Because is it better for your parents or your elderly to be in a facility where they have care and they are taken care of properly, which isn't always the case depending on how much money you're willing to spend on their facility?
Yeah.
Or is it better for them to be at home? Because there are a lot of siblings and people who will make that statement and then they're gone and all the responsibility is on one sibling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the parents getting abused, and it's like, how did this happen? You know? I think, like I said, a lot of this view is different. I can tell you, I'm very fortunate and very thankful just to transition and into losing your parent early. I'm thankful that my father was around as long as he was around. I'm thankful for the experiences and interactions and conversations that I got to have with them and the wisdom that he gave to me as I transitioned into my manhood. Mm-hmm. The things that I didn't understand that I was able to speak to my father about, and the love and respect that I have for him as a result. And I'm thankful that when my father passed away, as a man, I was able to be there every step of the way. I was in the hospital talking to the doctors, asking questions when my father got sick. I was at the funeral home, to all of it. I got the eulogy, the memorial. I'm so thankful that I was able as a son to be there for my family in this moment. You know, I'm so thankful that my Arabic was so strong at that point because my father, the mosque, was really bumping heads with my family. Mm-hmm. And because nobody else but my father was Muslim, like there was like a lack of respect. And when I rolled out with the Arabic, like the entire situation changed, and I'm thankful, you know. And it's a double-edged sword because there are a lot of people who don't really grow up and don't really become adults no matter how long they're here or how old they are until their parents are gone. Mm-hmm. And then there's some people that will always be affected by that. You know what I mean? Like there's really like I said, it doesn't matter if you've had good experience with your parents or bad experience, that death is always a hard thing. Yeah. Because you never had the time to make amends, or you never had the time to make a transition to a better place, or, you know, like there's so much unresolved things there. Like so
I feel like aging parents, like your parents aging, there is that opportunity there to kind of do that, make amends, and
but
kind of reconnect.
If that's something both parties are open to.
As opposed to just like it's a sudden death. And you never had that kind of opportunity to like...
And I don't even know... It's not even make amends for everyone. Sometimes for a lot of people, it's closure.
Yeah.
Closure.
That's
you know? And there are people who missed out on closure that will live with and resent and have feelings about those decisions and experiences forever. You know? And so it contributes again to me saying parents are a complicated thing. You know? Even from a good place. There was a coworker I had, and... I think something that happens with death also is that we edify people and we elevate them past what they were, regardless of what the reality of the situation is. You know, you're never supposed to speak ill of the dead. And I had a coworker, and she loved her father endlessly, and they had a great relationship, and she really had a lot of devotion for him, and she never felt resentful about having to take care of him in his older years as his health declined. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was so wild about it is we would talk sometimes, and you know, like real things slip out in conversation. And her father was actually responsible for a lot of hardship in her life, but she never blamed him. Mm-hmm. Like, I think I told the story before, like there was a dude who she really wanted to marry, was very special to her, and the next phase of her life was about to happen. Marriage, kids, everything. And her father told her, no, you can't marry him. And she accepted it, and she stepped away from the situation, and she trusted that her father had her best interest at heart and knew what was right for her. And so she ended the relationship. Mm-hmm. But just to find out years later after her father passed, it wasn't anything about this man's character that made her father say that. What happened was she found out that this man's mother used to be her father's mistress, and so it would have been a messed up situation for him if they would have gotten married. And because of that, she had to stop maybe one of the major events in her life that could have ended. And you know what I mean? I think another way that this conversation happens a lot is when we talk about Lonnie Went, who say her name? She wrote to Lonnie Went Young. Yeah, she talks about it all the time because Mother's Day is very hard for her because she does not have a good relationship with her mom. Mm-hmm. You know, and there are groups of us, and I think biblically, especially when you come from a Christian background, there's so many conversations about honor thy mother and father. You know, and we don't speak ill of the dead. But so what are you supposed to do when you're a person who wasn't lucky enough to have an amazing mother or father, and society is against you being honest about your anger and your grief and your sadness? We have a lot of people...
You write books like she did.
In fact, but we have a lot of people who are raised by grandparents, who are raised by aunts and uncles or adopted or other family members because their parents didn't step up for them. And I think we need more love and acceptance for those people.
I do too. I think Mother's Day is a very broad term. It's whoever you feel. Yeah. It doesn't have to be your biological mother or your...
But we need more vocalization on that. And
that is.
On another note, shout out to the people that had dope parents and amazing parents. And none of these conversations are familiar to you. I think that's amazing, and we're really happy for you that you have had that experience and that your children are more likely to have that experience.
So aging parents of them must be rough.
Yeah.
Like, it would hurt.
Because these are people that want every last day with their parents and want their parents to live forever. And you can tell those people too, because they have that relationship with their grandparents and their parents. Yeah. Because they just had dopeness in the dopeness, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes those people struggle more than the people that had the bad relationships. Because they have something that they never want to let go of. Yeah. That's been such an amazing part of their lives every step of the way.
And it's like a lot of those people kind of have open relationships with their parents where they can kind of honestly communicate. So who do you go to after that?
We've watched the video where people sit down with their granddad or their grandma, their mom and their dad, and they ask honest questions, and they do. So funny. I remember the one girl was like, are you still sexually active? And her dad was like, yeah, once a year, I'll go see a lady. But just that they were able to have that kind of conversation was beautiful. Because there are people who never get to talk. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a great movie. It's actually pretty depressing, called What Dreams May Come, starring Robin Williams. And it's about his life in heaven and the afterlife. He dies in a car accident. His kids have passed away before him, and his wife goes after. And it's about all of their relationships in heaven. But for them in heaven, you get to be the person you admire most. And he meets his mentor in heaven. And his mentor is his guide through heaven. And it turns out his mentor is not actually his mentor. His mentor is his son. His son is guiding him through heaven. And his father says to him, why didn't you just let me know it was you? And he says, because we wouldn't have been able to have this that we have right now. He said, in life, there are things that people never learn to get past. You are the parent and I'm the child, and there's a dynamic. And so a lot of people don't ever learn how to learn from their children. Yeah, that is true. Because the ego gets in the way. You're my child. You came from me. Who are you to teach me something? And so that wouldn't get in the way, he appeared in heaven as someone that he could be a friend to his father as. And so I think people that do get to have friendships and that love, that shit is beautiful. It's really super awesome. And I know that's
what I strive to have.
I know that's something that you very much want, and that me less so, but still more. I hold kind of the Ned Stark view. It's much harder to pass judgment and be justice when it's to a friend. That is true. And so I'm thankful that they have that big friendship dynamic with you, because I know there's hard things that have to happen in life that I will need to play a role for,
Which is even more so for parents who are kind of able to walk that line of
between both.
Being both, yeah. And have their kids come out great.
There's some people that really hit the lottery in terms of parents. And that's not even talking about money or financially. It's just sometimes, no matter what your life situation was like, it's dope to be able to say, yo, my father was always there for me. My mother was this every step of the way. You know what I mean? But I do think people with rough parent situations, bless you baby, tend to be more versatile. Yeah. Because there's more things that they have to learn to do for themselves that much sooner.
I feel like they mature quicker to be.
One of the first mother figures I ever had, she had to live her childhood as an adult because her mother was an alcoholic. And so every day before school, she had to clean her mother up and shower her and get rid of the bottles and make sure there was food for her mother to eat. And this was like in the 4th grade.
Yeah, it's rough.
And so even though it's not great, like there is a lot that you learn. We've seen the video that everybody thought was so amazing and cute with the older brother who was about 5 and the younger brother who was about 3, and them cooking a full meal.
Yeah, everyone thought that was cute, but I'm like,
it's sad. Even I know it really made my heart sad because there was this little girl in China in a documentary. Her mother and father worked in the city and had to send money back to them when they could. And she lived in the mountains with her 2 grandmothers. And one was a great-grandmother, one was a grandmother. The great-grandmother was blind. And the grandmother couldn't really take care of herself. So the little girl was 6 years old, taking care of her 2 grandmas.
Yeah.
So it's like the parent and the aging portion of it
there's many different aspects.
I think we'll stop here for today, but this is going to have to be a part 2. Right?
Yeah.
Because the next conversation that I want to have about this is what things we want to do differently than our parents. How is our family different, and what things do we want different than the family that we were raised in?
Yeah, I think
you know what I mean?
Touch on something like that similar.
We did,
but we can always come back and do it
because I think those are big dynamics. Because when your parents go, these are roles that we have to step into that not everybody's ready for. You know, and I think the what did you leave your family also plays a part of that.
Yeah,
because leaving your family money doesn't necessarily solve all problems.
I mean, it's a big help, but yeah, it doesn't solve all problems.
Like, you know, so, but there's is a lot of things I think still left in this conversation. So, you guys let us know on Twitter and IG and Facebook if you would love to hear a part 2 to this. If you do, then we'll jump into it. Even if you don't want to do a part 2, let us know what you thought of today's episode. We love you, family. We're very happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. We can't wait until next episode. Fa.